The kitchen light is already on when the day has barely decided to begin. A cup waits near the sink, still cool, holding the smell of yesterday's tea. Outside, something moves the air enough to tap the window once. The house keeps its quiet. There are small sounds that arrive without asking for attention. Footsteps overhead, then a pause, then nothing again. A phone stays face down, gathering dust instead of news. Time feels wider here. On mornings like this, questions can gather quietly, one after another, without any urgency to answer. They rest on the table like envelopes left unopened. The body moves anyway, reaching for water, setting the cup down carefully. Breathing continues. Nothing asks to be solved yet. The room holds what is present, and lets the rest wait. Light settles on the counter, steady and ordinary. A kettle hums softly, almost forgetting itself near the back burner. Later in the day, the house fills with movement that does not ask for permission. A chair scrapes the floor just enough to be heard. Someone forgets to turn off a light. A bag rests by the door, half open, holding things meant for another hour. Questions begin to show up more often when the pace picks up. They slip into small pauses, between sentences, between tasks, between one room and the next. Did that sound wrong? Was that the right choice? Should something have been said differently? The questions are not loud, but they repeat. The table carries marks from meals that came and went without ceremony. A plate is rinsed, then left to dry. Hands move almost on their own, following habits learned long ago. In these moments, the body remembers how to keep going even while the mind circles. A child speaks from another room, words tumbling over each other, urgent and unfinished. An answer is given, then reconsidered halfway through the doorway. The voice softens, then tightens again. It is easy to notice afterward how many versions of the same sentence passed through the air. The clock on the wall does its quiet work. Time keeps moving even when attention drifts backward. There is a moment of standing still, holding a cup, wondering if something earlier should be replayed once more. The cup cools while the thought stays warm. Dishes collect without complaint. Water runs. Soap smells faintly of lemon. The sound of rinsing fills the space where questions were just circling. For a few seconds, there is only temperature and motion and the steady rhythm of hands under water. Thoughts return anyway. They tend to do that. They bring along small doubts, folded neatly, as if they might be useful later. Was that too much? Was it not enough? The questions do not accuse. They simply wait. A towel is reached for, then forgotten, then reached for again. The body moves faster than certainty. Somewhere nearby, a door closes. Another opens. Life continues in overlapping layers, none of them stopping long enough to be examined fully. There are words spoken earlier that hover nearby, still looking for a place to land. They do not ask to be fixed. They only linger, familiar and unresolved. It is possible to carry them while wiping the counter, while straightening a stack of papers, while stepping over a toy left in the hallway. Light shifts as afternoon leans toward evening. The room looks the same, but feels slightly different. Shadows stretch. Sounds soften. The questions adjust with the light, becoming quieter, less sharp around the edges. A breath is taken without noticing. Another follows. The body keeps its own schedule, independent of doubt. Somewhere in the house, a small laugh appears, then disappears. The moment does not last, but it arrives fully. Nothing is answered yet. Nothing needs to be. The sink is turned off. Hands are dried on a sleeve. The room holds what remains, ordinary and unfinished. A chair is pulled back under the table. By early evening, the house takes on a different weight. The air holds traces of what was cooked, what was said, what was left unfinished. A window is cracked open, Not enough to invite cold, just enough to let the room breathe. Outside, someone passes by without being seen. There are moments when the questions return with more insistence. They arrive while shoes are kicked off near the door, while coats are draped over chairs instead of hooks. They surface while listening, nodding, responding, all at once. Did that sound impatient? Was there a better way to say it? The words replay themselves quietly, as if testing their own edges. A table is set again, almost automatically. Plates find their places. Cups are filled to different levels, according to habit rather than decision. A hand reaches for salt, then stops halfway. Someone clears their throat. Conversation moves forward, even with small hesitations tucked inside it. The body keeps participating. It always does. Passing a bowl. Pouring water. Sitting down, standing up again. There is comfort in these movements, even when the mind lingers somewhere else. The chair feels familiar beneath the legs. The floor is cool through thin socks. A question rises and falls during a pause in conversation. Was that look meant for me? Did I miss something? It fades as another voice begins speaking. Attention shifts, then drifts again. This back and forth has happened so many times it hardly feels noticeable. Light from the overhead fixture softens as someone adjusts the switch without comment. Shadows rearrange themselves around the room. Faces look slightly different under this gentler glow. The questions follow the change, losing some of their sharpness, settling closer to the surface instead of pressing inward. Food is eaten. Some bites are tasted fully, others barely registered. Plates scrape softly. A fork is set down, then picked up again. The body knows when it has had enough before the mind catches up. A napkin is folded once, then twice, smoothing out small creases. Between sentences, there are spaces where nothing is said. In those spaces, questions try to step forward. Did I listen well enough? Was that response too quick? They wait politely, as if aware that this moment belongs to something else. A laugh breaks through unexpectedly, light and brief. It does not answer anything. It does not need to. It changes the air in the room just enough to be felt. The questions retreat a little, making room for the sound to pass through. Later, the table is cleared. Plates are stacked with care. Someone carries them to the sink, water already running. The familiar clink of porcelain fills the space again. The rhythm of rinsing returns, steady and unremarkable. Thoughts loosen their grip while hands stay busy. The questions drift nearby, no longer demanding attention. They feel more like background noise now, present but not central. The body remains here, moving through small tasks, grounding itself in weight and temperature. A towel is hung back in its place. The counter is wiped once more. Evening settles further into the corners of the room. Nothing has been resolved. Nothing has been decided. The house continues holding its ordinary shapes, ready for whatever comes next. Night arrives without announcement. The house grows quieter in ways that feel familiar rather than empty. A lamp is turned on in the corner, its light softer than what came before. The rest of the room accepts the dimness without resistance. This is when questions tend to change their shape. They no longer rush in all at once. They arrive slowly, one at a time, as if checking whether there is still space for them. Was that moment earlier handled with care? Did something important pass unnoticed? The questions feel less sharp now, more tired than demanding. A blanket is pulled over the back of the couch, not yet needed but placed there anyway. The fabric holds warmth from earlier use. Sitting down brings a small exhale, the kind that happens before thought catches up. The body sinks into a familiar place. Sounds from outside thin out. A car passes, then nothing for a while. The room holds a low hum, barely noticeable, maybe from the refrigerator, maybe from somewhere else entirely. Silence is not complete, but it is close enough. In this slower air, questions sometimes soften into observations. A memory appears briefly, then drifts away again. It does not insist on being understood. It only passes through, like a shadow crossing the wall. Hands rest in a lap, still for once. There is no task asking to be finished. The mind wanders without urgency. Thoughts stretch out, then curl back in on themselves. Doubt feels less like a problem and more like a companion that has followed the day this far. A clock ticks somewhere, marking time that no longer feels scarce. Each second arrives evenly, without pressure. The questions adjust to this pace. They lose their edge when they are not being chased. A light flickers on a screen across the room, then is turned off again. The glow lingers for a moment behind closed eyes. Breathing slows, finding a rhythm that does not require attention. The body knows how to do this. Sometimes, a question forms and dissolves before it can fully take shape. It does not need an answer. It does not need to stay. The mind allows it to pass, the way it allows a sound from outside to fade without following it. The room feels held together by small, steady things. The weight of the couch. The warmth of the blanket nearby. The quiet consistency of the floor beneath bare feet. These details do not respond to doubt. They simply remain. There is a pause where nothing new arrives. No memory. No question. Just the sense of being here, in this room, at this hour. The moment stretches gently, without needing to be filled. Eventually, a hand reaches for the blanket and pulls it closer. The fabric shifts softly. The movement is unremarkable, but complete. The room receives it without comment, and the quiet stays. Later, when the house has settled further into itself, small routines begin to loosen. A mug is left where it was set down, no longer needing to be carried back to the kitchen. Lights are turned off one by one, leaving pockets of shadow that feel intentional rather than forgotten. Questions still appear, but they no longer stand at the center. They linger at the edges, quieter now, as if aware that this hour belongs to something slower. Did that moment really matter as much as it felt earlier? Was it noticed at all? The questions hover, then drift, unsure where to land. A hallway stretches softly ahead, familiar even in low light. The floor creaks once under a careful step, then goes still again. The sound does not ask for interpretation. It simply marks movement, then fades back into the house. The body moves with less effort now. Shoulders drop without being told. Breathing finds a lower place, steady and even. The mind follows reluctantly at first, then gives in. Thoughts lengthen, leaving more space between them. There is a memory of a voice from earlier in the day, replayed once more, then allowed to pass. It no longer carries urgency. It feels distant, already belonging to another time. The questions attached to it loosen, slipping free. A door is closed gently, the click of the latch barely audible. Another room waits, already dim, already prepared for rest. The light switch is reached for, paused over, then pressed. Darkness arrives without drama. In this quieter setting, doubt feels different. It is still present, but smaller, less demanding. It does not insist on being addressed. It sits nearby, like something that has followed along out of habit rather than need. The air feels cooler here. Fabric brushes against skin. A blanket is drawn up, then adjusted once more for comfort. These movements require no explanation. They happen because they always have. Questions rise briefly, then dissolve again. Did that answer earlier need more thought? Should something have been left unsaid? They fade before completing themselves, interrupted by the simple weight of the body resting. A sound from outside drifts in, muted and distant. It passes through the room without leaving a trace. The mind does not follow it. The moment remains intact. There is a sense of being held by the ordinary. The walls, the floor, the quiet agreement between objects to stay where they are. Nothing shifts suddenly. Nothing asks to be changed. Breathing slows further. Thoughts soften at the edges, losing their definitions. Doubt becomes just another shape among many, no longer standing apart. It blends into the background of the room. Eventually, even the questions grow tired. They settle somewhere out of reach, content to rest without answers. The body remains, warm and still, supported by what is already here. The room stays quiet, and keeps its watch. The house grows even quieter as the night deepens. Not empty, just settled. Sounds become more deliberate now, easier to notice because there are fewer of them. A distant pipe clicks once, then rests. The air feels thicker, as if it has decided to stay. In this quiet, questions do not disappear, but they lose their urgency. They no longer knock. They wait. Was that hesitation earlier noticed by anyone else? Did it matter as much as it felt in the moment? The questions arrive softly, already aware that answers may not come tonight. A lamp remains on in one corner, casting a small circle of light. The rest of the room accepts shadow without resistance. Objects soften at the edges. The familiar becomes slightly abstract, still recognizable, but less demanding of attention. The body shifts once, finding a better position. Muscles release a little more weight. Breathing deepens, unprompted. The mind follows the body's lead, slowing in small increments, letting go of the need to review. Thoughts stretch out and thin. A memory surfaces briefly, then fades before it can settle. It does not insist on being held. It passes through like a breeze that barely stirs the curtains. Questions try to attach themselves to these memories, but fail to find purchase. They slip off, landing nowhere. The effort to examine them feels unnecessary here, like trying to solve something that no longer exists. The room holds a steady temperature. Fabric brushes against skin. The sensation is simple and complete. Attention rests there for a moment, anchored by something tangible and present. Outside, a sound moves through the night and disappears. It could be an animal, or the wind, or nothing in particular. The mind does not follow it. The quiet remains intact. There is a growing sense of distance from the earlier parts of the day. Conversations feel far away now, their edges blurred. The questions tied to them blur as well, losing shape, losing weight. A hand moves idly, tracing the seam of a cushion, then comes to rest again. The movement is small, but grounding. It brings attention back to the body, to the simple fact of being here. In this slower space, doubt feels less personal. It no longer feels like something that needs to be managed. It is just another passing presence, no different from a sound or a memory that comes and goes. Time stretches gently. There is no need to measure it. The clock could stop and it would hardly be noticed. Each moment feels sufficient on its own. The questions that remain are quieter than before. They do not form full sentences. They are more like impressions, half-thoughts that drift and dissolve before taking shape. Eventually, even these impressions fade. What remains is the room, the body resting within it, and the steady rhythm of breath. Nothing presses forward. Nothing asks to be resolved. The night holds everything in place, and stays. Very late, when the house has gone still in a deeper way, even the quiet changes. It becomes wider, less detailed. The shapes of things are mostly known by memory now. Light comes only from small places, or not at all. This is the hour when questions finally slow enough to be felt without pressure. They no longer arrive as sentences. They appear as weight, as texture, as a faint sense of something unfinished that no longer asks to be completed. Did it matter? Does it still? The questions feel older here, worn down by the length of the day. The body lies where it has chosen to rest. Muscles soften further, releasing what they were holding without being asked. Breathing moves in and out quietly, steady enough to fade into the background. The body does not revisit the day. It stays where it is. A sound from another room settles and does not return. The house feels as though it is listening to itself. Pipes, walls, floors all keep their places. Nothing shifts suddenly. Nothing interrupts. In this stillness, doubt becomes almost transparent. It is present, but barely outlined. It no longer claims importance. It feels more like a residue than a problem, something left behind after movement has stopped. A memory surfaces without detail. No words, no images, just the sense of having been part of something earlier. It does not ask to be understood. It drifts through and dissolves again, leaving no trace. Questions rise once more, gently, as if out of habit. Were those moments enough? Was anything missed? They do not wait for answers. They seem content to exist briefly, then fade, like breath on a cold window. The room holds a low darkness, not heavy, just complete. Edges blur. The body feels larger than thought now, more real than memory. Attention rests on sensation alone, on warmth, on weight, on the quiet consistency of being supported. Time loses its structure here. Minutes no longer line up. They spread out, indistinct. The clock may still be counting, but it does so alone. The body does not follow. Even questioning itself feels tired. It no longer circles. It rests where it lands, then slips away. Nothing remains long enough to demand engagement. There is a brief awareness of the house as a whole, containing all of this quietly. Rooms holding their own darkness. Objects staying where they were last set down. Everything waiting without expectation. Breathing continues, uncounted. The body remains, present and sufficient. The day no longer presses forward or pulls backward. It feels complete enough to be left alone. Eventually, there is only this, stillness without explanation. No questions forming. No answers arriving. Just the quiet agreement between the body and the night to stay as they are, without needing anything more. Near the end of the night, the house no longer feels like a collection of rooms. It feels like one held space. The darkness is even now, without edges asking to be noticed. The air is calm enough to rest inside. The body stays where it is. No adjustment feels necessary. Breathing continues in a rhythm that belongs only to itself. Thought has grown quiet, not gone, just no longer stepping forward. Somewhere, far back, a question flickers once, then fades before it takes shape. It leaves no echo. There is nothing following it. The sense of the day remains, but without detail. Not the words, not the choices, not the small moments that once asked for review. Just the weight of having been here, of having moved through hours that are now complete enough to be left alone. The house holds this without comment. Walls remain. Floors stay steady. Objects keep their places in the dark. Nothing leans forward. Nothing pulls away. Breathing continues. The body feels supported, not by effort, but by what has been there all along. The night does not ask for understanding. It does not ask for answers. Stillness settles, not as an ending, but as a pause that does not need to be named. Nothing more arrives. Nothing needs to. The quiet stays,